Should video games be difficult? This is an argument that's popped up now and again these last few years. You see, games journalists nowadays seem apt to complain whenever a game that's even slightly challenging comes out, and usually try to compare it to Dark Souls because apparently that's the only difficult game series that exists. Guess. And whenever a game comes out that encourages pattern learning or actual thinking power, they tend to whine and complain, sometimes even accusing the game of not being inclusive to people with disabilities, because someone with a disability apparently is inferior to the common gamer, and every game must be dumbed down to include this demographic, even though that's ignoring the fact that disabled people can play games just fine, and options to help them accommodate to the game rarely involves just making it easier. Now, options for the disabled usually include things like colorblind modes or sound cues for people with impaired vision, and implying that the game should be easier for disabled people is actually really fucked up. Game journals are using people with actual issues in their lives to prop up an agenda that just so happens to make their job easier. It's well known that game journalists nowadays physically cannot play video games. They seem completely unable or willing to sit down and understand a game. Now obviously nobody's going to be a master of everything, but the standards they have for critics now is just inexcusable. But this argument is so dead, so beaten, so worn out that it obviously does not need any more discussion about it, and I want to talk about the nuances instead. Sid Alpha made a video talking about this subject a few days ago, mainly that Kojima's new game, Death Stranding, will have a very easy mode that's the equivalent of watching a movie. And he brought up some interesting points in that video, such as the idea that some games plain do not need difficulty options. That if a developer's intention is to create an ultra difficult experience, then they have every right to keep it as authentic to their vision as possible. Some people cheered and agreed, others thought he was being too unreasonable about the issue. That not every game needs to be a hardcore experience, and it chases away people too afraid of the difficulty and time investment. Now, I think that certain genres plain need difficulty options, since the modern definition of difficulty isn't even really agreed upon. Some games can do amazing things with difficulty, make extremely intense experiences, and give a genuine challenge. Others just boost enemy health and damage, and that's about it. So it turns into an unfair fight against bullet sponges that can kill you in 2 seconds. And some games focus way more on being a cinematic type thing than a video game, so they're almost designed to be played on the easiest difficulty. Can't have those multi-million-dollar cutscenes lose their impact by actually punishing a player for dying, which in my opinion is a very short-sighted way to look at it. If you want a movie, watch a fucking movie. Call it a dried up excuse, but video games are a completely different experience. A good video game that understands how to use the medium to their advantage can be unlike anything else, since it's way more interactive. Some weirdos say that horror games aren't scary if you die a lot, but that's a pretty dumb take. You see, horror is the genre of games that actually needs to be up there in difficulty. They rely on making the player feel completely powerless and vulnerable, like every decision you made is the wrong one. Modern horror games for a while completely fucked this up, since they bought into the whole Amnesia Slender bullshit trend. Or just putting a big, spooky monster that one-shots you can replace genuine tension and dread.
Whoa! What the hell is this? Surprise, motherfucker!
Now, Silent Hill 2 is considered one of the scariest games of all time. And that's because it knows how to get under the player's skin. Yes, it did have difficulty options, but there was no very easy automatic mode that we see with modern AAA games today. The closest you could really see is I think it was like in the HD re-release or the PC port, one of the two, but there was an option to boost the amount of ammo you can get for your guns. That still didn't make every single part a walk in the park. But it was just one of many options. You could customize the difficulty of puzzles or of combat, so if you wanted brainbuster puzzles but didn't want to bother with killing monsters, then you had the choice. But do you want to know some horror games that have unforgiving difficulties that, if made easier, downright negatively impact the experience? Well, for one, Pathologic 2. See, this game, which I highly recommend, please buy this, is a narrative-focused thriller RPG made by some dedicated as fuck Russians. The basic concept of the game is that you are a surgeon until the other two characters come out. You only really have the horror specs to play as. But he's returning home to a strange rural town with an unknown culture. After your father's murdered, the town goes to shit thanks to brewing political upheaval and a horrible plague that's killing the citizens. This very much wants to be an art house style experience that makes you think about the video game medium. It has a lot under the hood, and I recommend you check out the Mandalore reviews, though they do contain story spoilers. But the thing about this game is it's extremely fucking hard. You heard that right, the game that wants to be a smart experience is also hard as nails. You need to constantly manage the needs of yourself, you're bound to care for the sick, not to be stabbed by thugs in the night. It's intentionally made not to be fun. So obviously journalists whined and begged for a literal walking simulator option. The devs did patch in a difficulty slider after release, but they outright say not to mess with it since the difficulty is tuned to the way they wanted it, and lowering it or raising things can actually break the balance pretty bad. Besides, making Pathologic easier completely shatters the atmosphere the game tries so hard to build. Pathologic is designed to feel hopeless. You are stumbling around trying to save everyone, but the situation only gets worse. The already low morale sinks into the fucking Marianas Trench once the plague breaks loose. Every victory, no matter how small, feels substantial, to the point that scamming a small child out of a piece of bread is on the same level as finding a legendary weapon in Destiny. Now, another game that's a pretty great example of a horror game that uses unforgiving difficulty is Darkwood. You see, Darkwood is a game about trying to survive in a horrible mutated forest. To call it a survival game would really be discounting the mechanics and vibe it shoots for. This game is Lovecraftian, and it's in the best possible way. You are thrown into a completely alien environment with no idea how anything works, and you have to struggle to survive as you're tormented by the unknown. It 100% relies on making the player feel as though literally anything can kill them. Having the player one-shot every monster or never having to worry about bullets would completely kill the feeling of insignificance that's required for a Lovecraft-style story. Hell, Stalker is well known for the Master difficulty objectively being the best experience, since it makes the zone feel much more hostile and authentic, and a recruit difficulty is actually harder, at least in the beginning, since gun damage is lowered for all parties, including the player. Hell, even some non-horror games don't need difficulty options, as that would also do harm to the experience. Dark Souls relies on the same dread-filled, hopeless atmosphere that Pathologic wants to use, so an easy mode would give the player a false sense of a power fantasy. Obviously people do joke builds, but it's not like the devs really wanted you to do that, it's shit people came up with. Besides, Dark Souls isn't even that difficult. It relies on pattern recognition and exploiting shit to your advantage. Cuphead's now infamous for exposing how ill-equipped games journalists are in tackling difficult games. Yes, it has an easy mode, but the game punishes you for using it. And Cuphead's a tribute to games like Mega Man, which were pretty balls to the wall on challenge. Hotline Miami's entire selling point was its difficulty, and people fucking loved it. Thief and Thief 2 are intentionally made to prevent open combat, since the point is you're a thief and not a mass-murdering lunatic, so getting caught will end up with you fucking dead with a sword in your face. System Shock 2 is straight up unbeatable if you're stupid in how you build your character. Now, I'm not going to sit back and pretend that I'm great at video games, because I'm really not by any means. I love games like Pathfinder and Pillars of Eternity, but I play those games on the easiest difficulty, though that mostly comes down to horrible luck with dice rolls more than anything. So the D&D system just isn't something I pretend to have much skill in, or luck. Now games like Doom, Max Payne, and Bayonetta, yeah, I crank the difficulty up in those, because holy shit, that's intense and fucking awesome. Some of you might be questioning why I've been rambling about game difficulties for the past few minutes, but it's because I want to offer a new perspective on it. Some people think that only the developer's intention matters, and that's it, but they don't really explain what that means. Just that the developer can do what they want, and we have to respect that. Obviously, this can have problems if big companies make games brutally difficult, but then sell microtransactions to make the grind easier. But other people say that all games need difficulty options, then easier automatic mode must be included since everyone has the right to experience a game regardless of skill level. I wanted to bring attention to how developer intention can actually coincide with the tone a game is trying to set, and that a unique experience can be harmed by the inclusion of difficulty options, or to be more accurate, game journal difficulties. Since most times game journalists insist the game all around be simplified and watered down, all because they don't want to handle sitting down and learning the systems the game introduces. It reminds me of that joke story about Family Guy Online, where players were so stupid they genuinely couldn't level up past level 1. And if you think that's an exaggeration, not really, because remember when Dean Takahashi didn't realize you could level up skills in Mass Effect? Yeah, that was a thing. These are the people shaping the industry. So until next time, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. No joke this time. I don't really feel funny. I'm not a clown for your fucking amusement. Alright, see you guys.